Welcome back. Now that we've covered the big picture of getting out of Google jail, let's get into specific violations. If you're here in lesson 3, you must have encountered violations for violating Google's healthcare and medicines policies. Remember from the last lesson, it's important to get to the root of the problem with your Google account. You might have violations for circumventing Google, but what caused you to circumvent Google in the first place? If you're hearing this lesson, it means that either through contacting Google or taking lesson 2, you discovered the main reason for your suspension. Great. You're in the right place. Now it's time to fix the problem. More often than not, you were hit with that circumventing policies violation because you got into trouble for one of these healthcare medicines violations and you did not know how to solve it. For small businesses in healthcare, it is quite easy to violate Google's healthcare and medicines policies. But the good news is, and by the end of this lesson, you'll understand how to untangle the mess of violations and you'll be well on your way to fixing them and getting out of Google jail. Let's get started by talking about the most common violations I see under the healthcare and medicines policies. I'll show you how to get yourself on the right track after violating each policy. These violations occur around prescription drugs, restricted drug terms, speculative medicine treatments, and personalized advertising. Let's start with the prescription drug services policy violation. First off, Google has strict policies around advertising prescription drugs. You can't advertise them unless you're certified. As stated from Google's policy, Google restricts the promotion of services related to the online prescribing, dispensation, and sale of prescription drugs. Businesses subject to this policy include, but are not limited to, online pharmacies and telemedicine providers. You can see how this violation easily occurs. Here's an example. A small pharmacy begins running Google ads for flu medication, but doesn't realize they need to be certified through legit scripts first. Perhaps they thought the prescription only requirement was just for controlled substances. But in reality, the policy applies to the treatments they are advertising, and so Google flagged them. The solution to this policy violation? Get certified. The process involves getting certified as an online pharmacy. This is a critical step for businesses selling healthcare products or medicines, as not being certified will automatically get your ads disapproved. It might sound like a lot of work, but don't worry, it isn't too tricky. You do, however, need to make sure all the paperwork is filled out correctly. I will show you how to get it done in lesson 5. If you're selling any prescription medications or running ads in any healthcare space, I recommend getting legit script certified as soon as possible. This not only allows you to advertise legally, but also keeps your account in good standing. So, moving along in the next common violation in healthcare medicines policies. Google has an exhaustive list of restricted drug terms that they monitor even more closely than prescription medications. The challenge with these terms is they vary by country. So, a term allowed in the US, such as Botox, might be restricted elsewhere. The process to advertise these terms is similar to prescription meds. You'll need to get certified under Google's Healthcare Products and Services certification. And just know that even if you're certified, you still can't serve ads to those countries where it's prohibited. Get certified for restricted drug terms and check local regulations. Avoid using restricted drug terms in ad copy or landing pages if you're uncertified. A major difference with restricted drug terms is that many med spas and healthcare companies act as resellers, meaning they don't manufacture the drugs themselves. This can make things trickier since you're not the original producer. It is essential to understand the restrictions for each country to avoid violating Google's policies. Now, let's talk about speculative and experimental treatments policy violations. This is one of the most subjective areas of Google's policies and often trips up med spas. Google flags ads for treatments like gene therapy, stem cell therapy, or biohacking because they fall under what they consider to be speculative and experimental treatments. These type of treatments may not be FDA approved, and Google's policy is to err on the side of caution, flagging anything remotely related. An example of this may be a wellness clinic that advertises stem cell therapy for joint pain. They simply don't realize that this particular treatment is considered speculative and experimental by Google. So, they get a violation. If your ads get flagged for speculative medical treatments, the best thing to do is to remove the content immediately and review your ad copy. Google's system isn't perfect, and sometimes it flags things just because they're unsure of the medical terminology. That's why having your certification is so important. It gives you a leg to stand on when discussing issues with Google. Not to say the certification totally fixes all of your issues, but it does give you some credibility when you go to appeal. A lot of the time, this comes down to your copy. There are ways to talk about your products and services in your ads that will get by Google systems. In Lesson 6, we'll talk all about copy, so stay tuned. All right, for the final healthcare and medicines policy, let's get into a really critical area, personalized advertising. This is all about protecting users from ads that could exploit personal hardships or health struggles. Google keeps a close eye on any ad that feels too personal or invasive, especially in health-related topics. Google's personalized advertising policy diligently monitors ads that fall into sensitive interest categories, which includes ads that touch on topics of mental health, health problems, chronic illness, surgeries, identity, beliefs, sexuality, and more. This policy covers not only people facing these hardships, but also their potential caretakers. So, if you're running healthcare related ads, you'll need to stay clear of any language or targeting that feels like it's getting too personal. A common violation I see is when an ad tries to reach people with certain health conditions by focusing on their struggles. For example, a counseling service may use targeting that hints at past trauma or personal struggles, thinking this will reach the right audience. But this approach can get flagged fast. Google sees it as exploiting sensitive experiences. That is a quick route to suspension. To stay compliant, keep your ad copy neutral and avoid personal references such as, "Do you have?" Focus on what your product or service does without directly connecting it to a personal struggle or a specific condition. For example, instead of hinting at someone's mental health struggle, you can highlight general benefits of wellness or support services. Keep it informative and broad, and you'll steer clear of personalized advertising violations. One more thing to keep in mind is that Google's policies do not just apply to the ads themselves. They also apply to the keywords and landing pages connected to your ads. If you have restricted terms on your landing page or anywhere on your site, your ads will get disapproved. So, make sure the language on your ads and landing pages complies with Google's policies. In summary, to avoid these healthcare and medicine violations, make sure you're certified. Be cautious about the terms you use, and always keep Google's guidelines in mind when creating your ads and landing pages. This step is critical in keeping your account from getting flagged and helping you stay out of Google jail. So if you're ready to overcome your healthcare and medicines policy violations, use the Healthcare and Medicines Policy Compliance Guide to fix your copywriting in your ads, keywords, and landing page. Then, if you really want to have a leg to stand on when you contact Google, go ahead and get certified. I'll show you how it's done in Lesson 5. And don't forget, in Lesson 4, we go over any violations that fall under the category of misrepresentation policy violations. So, even if you aren't dealing with those today, I highly recommend checking out that lesson as well. You never know when Google will slap you with another violation that you don't understand. By taking these lessons now, you're future-proofing yourself and ensuring you have all the tools to handle all the scenarios you may encounter going forward. And one more thing, remember to follow and document your process on the Get Out of Google Jail worksheet that you got at the end of lesson 2. This will help you stay organized with each step of the process. Okay, I'll see you in the next lesson if you decided to learn about misrepresentation violations. Or I'll see you in lesson 5 where you'll work on that certification.